Thanks for tuning into the Murphology Podcast. I'm your host, Kathy, aka Murph, and I am here to give tips and information about group bicycling and bicycle touring with a focus on the Midwest, and hopefully provide some entertainment for you as well. Well, on the show today is Dan Trembath. Hey, Dan.
Hi there.
How's it going today?
Pretty good.
Good. Well, we're on location at one of our favorite spots to have a cocktail. So hopefully there's not too much background noise. And it's super hot and it's probably going to storm. So let's see if we can make it through this.
I hope we can.
Oh, cue the motorcycle that goes by. Well, about Dan. So in my opinion, Dan is a pro, as in professional, when it comes to short multi-day tours. He packs smart and he packs a lot of stuff on his bike. I would say he's like the Boy Scout of touring. I hope that's not offensive. Right?
Definitely not.
If you need it, Dan probably has it and is more than ready to help. So this past weekend, Dan led a group ride that visited the High Trestle Bridge, which is located near Madrid, Iowa. Hopefully, if you haven't seen the High Trestle Bridge, you, after this podcast, Google it and find out. It's a wonder of Iowa. So how was the trip, Dan?
It was very good. The weather outlook originally looked like it was going to be pretty rainy, but we were really fortunate. The day was mid-60s and warm and sunny.
Yeah.
It wasn't until about maybe 5 o'clock where the clouds kind of rolled in, but we did get rained on at about 8 o'clock to about 11:30.
Were you still able to see the bridge when it was lit up?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. It was a little damp, but you still made it through.
Correct.
That's awesome. Well, let's get started. Here we are in Iowa, and that's kind of what this podcast is about, talking about group riding and bike packing or bike touring in the Midwest. But have you always lived in the Midwest?
I have. I grew up in northern Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
North of Duluth, which is really close to Canada.
Yeah.
Went to college in North Dakota, and then work brought me to Iowa.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely a milder climate down here compared to where I grew up.
So when it's super cold and we're all bundled up, you're probably still like, it's fine, you guys, come on.
Yes.
Well, when you were in Minnesota, did you ride bikes much?
A little bit. I grew up with BMX and mountain biking, mostly as a means, I guess, to hang out with friends.
Yeah.
Was an 80s kid. It was the way to hang out with friends and meet up. After, I'd say, about high school, wasn't doing as much biking, kind of put it away for a little bit of time and went off to college. After high school, yeah.
And that's kind of a common description of, people bike for transportation when they're little kids. Maybe not now, because doesn't seem as safe. Although when I was a little kid, I don't think I had a helmet. I don't think I even thought about cars, when I was on the street, but somehow I made it. I don't know. Yeah.
Right. Just had to come home when the lights came on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you didn't ride bikes as much as an adult, so to speak, but have you been back at all to kind of see what the cycling culture is like there?
Yeah. Especially after college, gone back several times just to visit family, and the cycling community has definitely picked up.
Oh, good.
I'd say ever since the late 90s to early 2000s, there was a lot of large projects that were funded in northern Minnesota. And just to name a couple, the Mesabi Trail that goes from Grand Rapids, Minnesota, all the way to Ely. It's about a 130-mile stretch.
Oh, wow.
Most of it is paved, and it kind of winds through iron ore, open pit mines, and lakes. I think there's 25 to 30 miles left that still hasn't been paved, but there is a gravel trail on that stretch. Another big one is the Paul Bunyan Trail from Bemidji to Brainerd. That one, I believe, is one of the longest continuously paved trails. About 112 miles, I think, is what it's at. And there's a few others. There's one on the northern shore of Lake Superior, running from Two Harbors. What is it? The Gachigami Trail, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's right. It runs parallel to the north shore of Lake Superior, and there's a lot of large cliffs, waterfalls from all the rivers going into Lake Superior. Mm-hmm. There's a famous the Split Rock Lighthouse. So
Yeah.
it's
Well,
pretty,
all of those sound like super beautiful. Now, and you didn't mention it, but everyone probably knows that there's 10,000 lakes in Minnesota. So I'm sure it's like every time you go around the corner, you're just like, oh, it's so beautiful. And I'm sure there's a lot to see. Plus, like you mentioned, the Great Lakes. We need to plan a trip there. I think you've tried it. I think you've tried a couple times, and as a social group, we just haven't pulled the trigger. So you need to get on that.
Yeah, I need to organize something.
And now it's here on a podcast, so you just said that you're going to do it.
I like that.
So when you look at like bicycle touring, and I say this on every episode, but bicycle touring can be defined in many ways, and I certainly do not define bicycle touring, at least for me, as in month-long, everything on your bike that you need. I'm more of a multi-day or a week at a time. Typically, even an overnight is to me bicycle touring, and it means putting all your stuff on your bike to sleep, to change clothes, sometimes to eat. Usually we'll find a place to go. But name a few places that you've been.
Wow, let's see here. The Katy Trail in Missouri, stretching from historic St. Charles,
yes,
to Herman. I've done that stretch a couple times. Root River in Minnesota has been a common one. Mm-hmm. Harmony, Preston, Lanesboro, those segments. I've done the Mesabi Trail in northern Minnesota. That's a fun one. Did it a number of years ago. And several overnights just around the Cedar Rapids area, stretching out to Palo, Lake McBride. Independence is a fun one. And obviously LaPorte City, we've done that one a couple times.
I was going to say the nice thing about the trail system from Cedar Rapids is it will take you, well, now as far south as like almost Solon, and then north it will take you all the way to Waterloo. Yeah. So
another big one is the bike packing out to the start of RAGBRAI. We don't quite get to the start, but we make an attempt, and definitely have a good-sized group along on that trip.
Yep, and I've been part of that trip quite a few years, and it is a blast. I mean, we gear up and usually go 3-4 days, sometimes a little longer, and wherever we end up, then everybody kind of does their own thing, whether they jump on RAGBRAI, go home. For me, I always had to work one of those days, so... and this year, I don't think we've talked about it on a different podcast, but we literally launched from Cedar Rapids. We wanted to launch, let's say, at noon, and then at 1:30, it's like black sky, pouring down rain. Let's wait another hour. So then we finally hit the trail, and we end up on a newly, what would you call that, tarred?
Yes, I missed this year's bag out, but I seen the tar that was left on the bike and bags.
It was like gravel, I think, and then tarred it. And you couldn't really tell when we were pedaling through it because it was wet. But we all get to, I think, the little town of Atkins, and we are completely tarred. Our bikes are tarred. There are chunks of tar everywhere. So,
pro tip, bringing wet wipes.
Yeah. Well, we ended up finding somebody in Atkins, and I think you'll talk about this later, just how friendly people are, of the Gugon.
Yes.
And Gugon saved our lives, both our bodies and our bicycles. So those are some of the places you've been on your touring bicycle. Do you have a favorite place to ride?
Oh, honestly, that's a hard one to pick.
I know, yeah.
I really enjoy all of them. I'd say all the adventures I've mentioned, I'd say provide me with endless stories and memories. They're all unique. But I'd say the common denominator is in enjoying those touring adventures with close friends.
Yeah.
We've seen some of the worst conditions with like downed trees and giant potholes, torrential rain, but whenever there's adversity, it seems like we pick each other up and we make the best of whatever situation. But I'd say seriously, the bag out trip to RAGBRAI, we're kind of stuck with each other for a few more days.
Yeah, we are stuck with each other. And to me, that is what bicycle touring is all about. It's the group aspect and, getting to know people. Like, it's funny, sometimes we'll spend 3 or 4 days with each other and it's just a neutral zone. Like, we might not know where we all work. We might really not know where anybody lives. And it's not because we don't care. It's just that we're along for the fun and the biking and enjoying the time together. So let's talk about bicycle setup. Describe what you ride and maybe a few important to you features.
My current touring bike is a Mossy Giramondo. It is a steel frame bike.
Okay.
It's got 650B, or also known as 27.5 by 2-inch tires. Kind of gives me the versatility to ride different types of trail conditions, mix of road, gravel, dirt. It's especially an off-road kind of setup. Some of the important features. To me, bulletproof is my game. I tend to be a little rough on my bikes, and I need a bike that can take the abuse. It sounds heavy, but there's a difference kind of between heavy and unwieldy.
Yeah.
The geometry is quite relaxed, and it's kind of somewhat between a mountain bike and a cyclocross kind of gravel bike. Being comfortable is important. A perfectly sized bike with a comfortable geometry and saddle wire, it allows you to ride all day.
Yeah.
I've had good luck with a particular saddle, a Brooks Cambium all-weather saddle. Had it for several years. And I'd say another important feature is you got to have racks and panniers. We're bike packing.
Yeah, that's right. You got to put your stuff somewhere. When you're looking at that Brooks saddle, is the Cambium, I may be saying it wrong, but is that the one that you quote, I'm putting air quotes here, that you don't have to break in, so to speak?
That is correct.
Yeah, and it's also, it can weather the storm a little bit better than other saddles.
Correct, yeah. It doesn't soak in any moisture and stretch like a leather saddle does.
Yeah. I've never made the stretch to try Brooks saddles, so I'm considering it, but right now I'm still stuck on Oregon and Terry. I love those guys. So.
Nice. And
back to your point about geometry, I've always been impressed in the past. You used to, I don't think you do anymore, but you used to carry a music box on the back of your bike. And it wasn't just a music box. It was like what's it called?
It was a 50 cal ammo can in which I put 6 by 9-inch speakers in it with a motorcycle battery, and it weighed about 18 to 19 pounds.
Yeah, and that was back when, before e-booms were around, and so you were like the guy that supplied the music, and you would always have this huge amount of weight on the back of your bike that wasn't gear, it was actually your music system. So I was always impressed that you compensated for that by putting most of your gear on the front of your bike.
Yes.
And I don't know if you still do that, but I was always like, why does he have so much stuff on the front of his bike? And then you try and lift your bike, and then you realize, oh my God, it's because the back of his bike is super heavy too.
Yes, that stereo has been since retired for a little bit of time. I found that I wasn't being able to listen and talk with friends as I was cycling as often. Yes, it was good for one music source to be dispersed amongst the group.
Sure.
But I miss that aspect of talking with everyone.
Okay, so like I mentioned, sometimes you have bags on the front. Now that you do not have your 18-pound stereo on the back, you probably utilize your whole bike as far as panniers go. So what kinds of things go inside the bags?
Well, camping gear, tent, hammock, depending on what type of sleeping you want to do. Sleeping bag, air mattress. I also carry an array of tools. Sometimes I think I carry too many tools. But
wait, I gotta stop you there because my kickstand was loose when we were on some trip where we were up in LaPorte City, and I was complaining that my kickstand was loose, and I'm like, I don't know how to, the whatever piece that needed to be tightened. You pull out this like 8-inch long something or other. What was that?
I had some robo grips.
Yeah, and I'm like, what? And he's like, let me try this out. Boom. Kickstand was back to the way it should be. So anyway, I appreciate that you carry a lot of tools.
Well, thank you. It's definitely, gotten me out of a couple situations along with some other friends.
Yeah.
Some other things, let's say a lot of my group riding, I carry some sort of cooler with beverages, medical kit, toiletries, some of the basics I think that I always tend to carry. Sometimes I'm not always set up to just bike pack. Always have, I'd say, 2 larger pannier bags on my bike.
So depending on the distance you're going, the bags may still be on your bike, but what's in it may be 1 pound versus 15 pounds, or just depends on what you're doing. I think we did an episode a couple weeks ago with Jesse, who we are both friends with, and he said the same thing, that he may look like he's fully loaded, but it doesn't necessarily mean there's a lot of stuff in there. So I asked this in a previous episode too, but any luxury items?
Yes. A lot of times I'll carry some sort of massage roller. Work out the kinks whenever you get off the bike and legs are feeling fatigued.
Right.
I've also carried like a tennis ball, just laying that on the ground and kind of rolling over the top of that.
Yep.
Another luxury item, camping chair. A lot of times I carry a tri-fold chair that get off your feet, allows you to bring that core temperature of your body down a little bit.
And I think that when I did the episode with Jesse, we specifically talked about your trifold chair, and that I'm going to say it saved me that day. It was like so hot, and we all took turns sitting in that chair. So.
I did listen to the podcast, and I did hear that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you kind of go, that's me? That's me.
A little bit, yes.
So I've never really mentioned my luxury item, and it's kind of funny, and I have a couple of friends who carry the same item, but it's a set of Uno cards. And I'm telling you, when we stop somewhere, whether it's a bar or a park or just somewhere where we're kind of chilling out, you get a set of Uno cards out. It's so fun.
It is fun.
It's an easy game, whether you're 5 years old or 50. I just love it. So that's my luxury item, and it's pretty tiny too. It doesn't take up too much room.
We've had a few Uno games go quite the distance.
Yeah. Speaking of Jesse, shout out to Jesse for having a lot of stuff on his bike. But I think you might be beating him. I'm not sure. And it's not a competition. But do you want to play the same game that him and I played, which was, do you have this on your bike?
Absolutely.
Okay. So neither one of us are on our bike tonight because it's getting darker and darker as we speak. But pretend that you're fully loaded. Okay. Do you have on your bike a way to charge your phone?
I do.
What do you have?
USB battery bank.
Oh, yeah.
Anywhere 1,500 milliamp hours. Get several charges on the cell phone or other devices.
Okay. Do you have spare tubes?
Yes, I do.
How about two? You have two?
I normally carry 2 spare tubes.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Patch kit?
Yes, I do.
Extra spokes?
Yes, but after listening to the podcast of Jesse, I've just upped my game and put in for one of the Fiber Fix Kevlar spokes.
Oh, nice.
Yes, the one spoke is for my bike and no one else. So if anyone else is in trouble, that definitely opens up. Also, like right now I carry a chain whip and a spline tool to back off the cassette. That's extra more weight. With this Kevlar, I don't need to carry those extra tools to replace a spoke that would break on the cassette side of the rear wheel.
So I hope that I don't have a spoke break, but if I do, I hope you or Jesse are along for the ride. Okay, do you have rain gear?
I do. Normally I carry rain gear and swim trunks.
Oh, smart.
Yeah, so the swim trunks definitely double up during the summertime through the warm, humid Iowa summers.
Yes, definitely. First aid kit.
Yes, stocked with a little bit more than the essentials. I got like a suture kit, water purification, allergy meds, several different other things.
And
as well.
I can tell you firsthand, I had a nice blister on the back of my foot, and I was complaining about it instead of doing something about it. And here comes Dan with his medical kit, and he's got like a medical tape that I put a Band-Aid and some medical tape, and it got me through the day. And miraculously, when I took everything off, the blister was back to being flat. So, yeah. And you saved somebody else that either had a stomach issue or like a Pepto-Bismol tab or something.
Yeah, so I do carry a couple of emergency.
Yeah, you had everything in that kit. And it was huge. Like it was big to fit on your bike.
It was one that I originally got for a car.
Sure, okay.
So it's maybe 8 inches by 10 inches or so.
Yeah, but pretty valuable. I mean, it's worked several times so far. So
yes.
Okay, silly parts. I think that I asked Jesse most of these too, but Okay, some sort of tourniquet if someone is severely injured.
So I do not carry a tourniquet, but I have thought about this, and if the situation did arise, I would use a spare tube along with like an Allen hex wrench. I tend to carry a full set of Allen wrenches, and that would be kind of a last resort type of thing, because I'm definitely not a medical professional.
Right.
And yes, let's leave that to the trained professionals.
Right. But this, of course, would be in a
dire need, yeah.
weird situation where we were not near a medical professional. So,
Right.
again, I would want you or Jesse to be with me if something terrible happened. So, bear repellent.
Can't say I do. Typically in the Midwest, the bears are more scared of you than
Right.
you are of them.
Right.
Even though I've come across aggressive dogs as well that have gotten close. For a while, I did have an air horn on my bike,
yeah.
and that was kind of a good one. But kind of retired it for a little bit of time.
You probably didn't need it, and you're like, I need to shave a little bit of junk off of my bike. So, okay, a knife or other cutting device.
Yeah, so normally I carry a personal knife on my hip, just a little 2-inch knife, and then there's one always inside of my medical kit as well.
Okay. What's on your bike that maybe I haven't mentioned that most people would not carry?
Not carry. Maybe an extra pair of shoes. I carry a lot of times flip-flops. It's good to get out of the bike sandals when stopping and resting the feet. I want them to dry a little bit.
I think the swim trunks is a fabulous idea for men because maybe people don't know a lot about the group that we hang out in Cedar Rapids, but a lot of the guys wear kilts. They're from a company called Sport Kilt, so they're meant to be worn, in active situations. But they're wool, so if it starts pouring down rain, pretty smart to be able to throw on your swim trunks, and then once the rain's done, you can trade them back or, whatever. And like you said, if it's really hot or you pass by a swimming hole, there you go, you got it.
That's right. Let's see, another thing I haven't mentioned yet, carry lots of sunblock.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm fair-skinned, and the sun can do a little bit of damage and keep you sidelined from the bike.
Yeah. So I have sunscreen as well, and it's in a very small, maybe 4 ounces, and it has a carabiner on it. So I have it clipped visible on the back of my bag, and it's amazing how many people are like, can I just have a little squirt of this? And you do want them to, because being sunburnt the next day is no fun for everyone.
Right.
So, and you're fair skinned. You just start turning red, and everyone's like, Dan, put some sunscreen on.
That's right. Another item is sometimes I don't carry a camp stove or cook set. A lot of our cycling is from town to town, and most of our tours, we have those services, and they're within reasonable distance that we really don't need a cook set.
Right. But you have one if you end up going on a tour and you need one.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, me too. But for us, at least, I assume that it's true for the whole Midwest, but we have a love of a convenience store called Casey's. And I think I've mentioned it before on this podcast, but it's like a one-stop shop. I mean, you can get yourself a new toothbrush, or you can get some beer, or you can get pizza or donuts or your Pepto-Bismol. I mean, they have everything. Loaf of bread. We could probably, if we did have your camp stove, we could, fry up some eggs.
That's right.
But we
Do a whole meal.
We spend a ton of time at Casey's, and I'm not embarrassed to say that.
Neither am I.
So how about any bicycling do's or don'ts worth mentioning?
Ooh, I'd say do ask questions. Most cyclists just love to talk bicycles and gear, and they're not shy about it.
Yeah.
So definitely ask. Don'ts. You don't need the shiniest piece of new gear, the lightest. Start small in it. You can acquire all of this over time. You'll kind of funnel into your style. Let's say do an easy overnight trip. It's the easiest way to see what you used and what's unnecessary. This is the time to train before you're going to a big extended tour, if that's a goal of yours.
Yep. And an easy overnight also means that you're not too far from home. Like if you panic or something, weather or something mechanical, you're
Right.
not too far away.
And that's another one. Don't forget to look over your bike. All
yeah.
repairs and maintenance, lubrication, making sure that you don't face any unnecessary challenges on your tour.
Right. And the easy ones, air in your tire, make sure your chain is greased properly,
Right.
and your brakes work. I mean, those are the main things. And when people don't check those, I mean, those can be end of the day. I mean, you're done.
Right.
So
Another I would say is make yourself approachable. Talk to locals. You'd be surprised how many strangers are willing to just strike up a conversation or even help you out. Sometimes we sport little conversation pieces. You and your friends may be familiar with traveling by bike, but off the beaten path, people have never conceived of riding these long distances on bikes.
Right.
You can cause people to reconsider what's possible for them and recall maybe similar adventures of their lives, and you could be an inspiration. We've had so many families offer us food, lodging,
Yeah.
beer, just to get to know you.
I think it's been 2 or 3 times that we, but when I say we, I mean part of the group that bags out to the start of Ragbri, we befriended some bar owners who ended up letting us sleep in the bar. And,
Right.
Normally I would never even consider sleeping on the floor of a bar. But that particular first year, it was, 100 degrees at 10 o'clock at night. And we probably had just enough to drink that we're like, yeah, why wouldn't we sleep in the bar? And so we did, and it was so fun. And, once the bar closed, it was lights out. And then the next morning, they made breakfast for us.
Yes,
it
they
was
did.
awesome. And we've been back since then. Oh, and they offered us showers.
They did.
And it was like at the firehouse, but, oh, man, that was, like you said, the hospitality of strangers. They look at us like, you guys are crazy, but we're going to help you.
That's right.
Yeah, and then I do remember one other morning, and I can't recall if you were with us. We camped at a pavilion of a park, and we woke up in the morning, and a man from across the street walked over with this huge pot, and in the pot was like this concoction of eggs and beans and sausage, and he brought it over and said, you guys might need some, get fired up for the day. And then there was a big spoon, and that's all we had.
That's right. And he just asked us to drop it off at his house when we were
It was
done.
amazing. And so we're all like, do we eat this or don't we? And then before you know it, the pot was empty because we were like, oh my gosh, this is so good. But, we never even met the guy the night before. He just
We did not.
saw us and thought we were, maybe he thought we were crazy. I don't know. But it was a blast. So those are some awesome do's and don'ts and some good inspiration for, being able to talk to people. Definitely gets you moving forward for future trips. So
That's right.
That's awesome. Yeah. So speaking of future trips, do you have any adventures on the horizon?
Well, vacation from work is somewhat limited.
Yeah.
But I definitely, in the upcoming next year, maybe year after, want to get up to Minnesota and do either like the Paul Bunyan or the Mesabi Trail.
Yeah.
Those look like some great stretches.
And there actually is a Paul Bunyan ride.
Yep.
Our buddy Brooks Reynolds, who's out of Des Moines, he has some connections up in Brainerd. Is that what it's called?
Yes,
Brainerd.
Brainerd. Yep.
And so it's literally called the Paul Bunyan ride. So it's a blast. So you guys Google that after you're done listening to the podcast, the Paul Bunyan ride. So anyway, go ahead.
Oh, and also the Katy Trail. I'd love to do the full Katy
yeah.
Trail. Parking in St. Louis, catching the Amtrak to Kansas City, and doing the 210 miles of the Katy Trail.
Now, is the Katy Trail, it's almost all limestone, right?
Yes.
Okay, I figured so. The parts that I've done from historic St. Charles was, I'm pretty sure, all unpaved.
Correct.
Okay, but it was a blast too.
Pretty sure it's 210. I'm trying to remember the distance, but it sounds right.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
It's a long ways and involves a train, so there you go. Well, Dan, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I loved hearing your stories, and I actually love being part of your biking group, so thank
Absolutely.
you.
Same here.
All right.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks. Well, how about a touring tip? Let's talk cool weather gear. There are plenty of days in the year, especially in the Midwest, where your bike ride involves temperatures that vary drastically throughout the day. For example, a typical fall day in Iowa may start out brisk, but as soon as the sun starts shining, you quickly realize you are overdressed. My advice is to invest in layers, lots and lots of layers. I'm a big fan of merino wool and wool blends. Wool gear is lightweight, warming, and wicking, meaning the wool absorbs moisture away from your body. A very wise man, Rob McKillop, a shout out to Rob, once told me the tip of all tips that I live and breathe by. He said, when it's cold out, don't sweat while you are cycling. Why does he say this? Well, because if you start sweating and then the temps drop, you are at great risk for getting very cold in your wet clothes, maybe even hypothermia if you are stuck in those wet clothes for a long time. So back to talking about layers. Always start with less layers than you think you need on your body, but pack more layers for later. It takes me about a mile to get warmed up, so if I start my ride feeling chilly, I quickly go from chilly to comfortable. If I start to feel warm, I stop and take off a layer or two. The goal is not to sweat. If I'm out biking all day, as the sun goes down, the temps will drop quickly. And for me, the first areas to get cold are my ears, my hands, and my feet. So easy layers to add would be wool socks, gloves, and a headband. They make a huge difference for me. And if it continues to get colder, adding merino wool tights and a lightweight jacket help tremendously. Don't put on too heavy of a jacket or you'll be sweating before you realize it. And as Rob would say, sweating can be the kiss of death if riding long distance in cold. So pack some extra layers and invest in a few merino wool items. That's this week's touring tip. Well, check out murphologypodcast.com and email me at murphologypodcast@gmail.com. I appreciate you and thanks for taking the time to tune in and listen to the Murphology Podcast. I will leave you with this quote from the unwritten book of Murphology. This quote comes from Brian Tracy. Leadership is the ability to get extraordinary achievement from ordinary people. Think about it.